Road to Recovery. We're a 501c3 charity based in New Jersey, and we assist victims of sexual abuse and their families all over the world, but mainly east of the Mississippi. Next to me is James Faluszczak, Faluszczak, and he's from Buffalo. He's a former priest of the Diocese of Erie and a survivor of clergy abuse, as I am. I am also a former priest of the Archdiocese of Newark, New Jersey. We're here today to call on Cardinal Daniel DiNardo to come clean 100%. When he knelt down in 2007 before Pope Benedict and was named a cardinal of the Catholic Church, he made a promise to Pope Benedict, as all cardinals do. He pledged to Pope Benedict that he would keep secret anything that would cause scandal or embarrassment to his church. We are here today to ask Cardinal DiNardo to break that pledge and for Pope Francis not to enforce that pledge on any of his bishops or priests. We would like to know what Cardinal DiNardo knows about the Diocese of Pittsburgh, the Diocese of Sioux City, Iowa, and anywhere else, including the Congregation for the Bishops in Rome, that Cardinal DiNardo knows about clergy sexual abuse, because we know that authorities in Galveston, Houston, felt that he was not being transparent and open enough, so they raided his diocesan offices. So we believe that there is something here in Pittsburgh that Cardinal DiNardo knows something very well about, perhaps even some of the redacted names from the report that Jim will discuss a little bit. So we're here to say to Cardinal DiNardo, come clean with whatever you know about any priest or deacon in this diocese who has committed any kind of clergy sexual abuse. Now, we also want Cardinal DiNardo to come clean about the policy of shredding files or getting rid of files. In the Diocese of Green Bay, when Bishop Zubik was the bishop there, in 2006, he began a policy, according to him, to enforce federal law. And he began to remove psychological information about different priests, supposedly so that he could abide by the law. Well, we knew about that because in 2010, Father John Dorfler, then the Chancellor of the Diocese of Green Bay under Bishop Zubik, was deposed. And he said that Bishop Zubik indeed started a policy of not including information in the files of different priests, removing that information. Father John Dorfler is now the Bishop of Marquette, Michigan. So, Cardinal DiNardo, Bishop Zubik, Cardinal Wuerl, Bishop Bevilacqua, who became Cardinal Bevilacqua, all of these people who pledged secrecy in various levels of their episcopacies, of their hierarchy, what do you know that must be told to the parishioners here in Pittsburgh and all of the public in Pittsburgh to keep children safe? We want to know what information you still have about that, because until we have total and unequivocal transparency, children will never be safe. I'd like to turn now to Jim.
I was sexually abused by my pastor when I was in high school, growing up in Erie, Pennsylvania. And because of my upbringing, I regarded Father Daniel Martin as just a bad egg. And I still felt called to become a priest. And as I journeyed through the priesthood, not only did I have to contend with my own trauma, but I was also in close and regular proximity with folks that we now know are publicly are offenders and are named in the grand jury report. And even while I was simply a rank and file priest, I wasn't a member of diocesan administration. I wasn't heading up the diocesan ladder in Erie, but I knew of multiple priests that had a history of the sexual abuse of children who had been treated and returned to ministry and even promoted. About 2 years ago, this time, just up the street from here at the Manor Building, I testified before the 40th investigating grand jury. And not only did I speak to them about what Father Martin did to me, but I spoke to them at length about the cover-up that I witnessed. I also testified about 3 allegations that I took to 2 different bishops who failed to act on those allegations and failed to enact the statutory requirements of the Dallas Charter. So these are things, I brought allegations to Bishop Persico of Erie and to the retired Bishop Donald Troutman, and they did nothing. You don't get to be a bishop without having a certain resume. You don't achieve that office without mastering all of the tasks required to get there. The cover-up not simply of child sex abuse, but also the epidemic of secret lifestyles of priests who are unfaithful to their vows. I have done my own investigation. I was very closely involved with the investigation that led to the grand jury report. And since its release, I've done further studies of it, and I can name 2 of the redacted parties in that report. I'm not going to do that today. But from my research, it is abundantly clear that the 11 named people in Pittsburgh, that some of them are likely still in ministry, because the 2 that I'm aware of are still in ministry. And we need to know, because we don't see much mention in the grand jury report of Cardinal DiNardo, who was a longtime priest of the Diocese of Pittsburgh, worked in the upper echelons of diocesan offices in education at the time when several priests at North Catholic had allegations against them, which have again come out as a result of this. What did he know about that? When we look at the 11 redactions in the Pittsburgh portion of the grand jury report, is Bishop DiNardo, is Cardinal DiNardo one of the redacted parties, or within the various chapters or the various accounts of priests, is he redacted under abused, alleged abuser priests as somebody who was part of their assignment history? Priests who were in education, for example, since he was in that education office. What familiarity does he have with the history here in Pittsburgh? It is a shame, it is a scandal that the president of the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops is one of the very first targets of the county district attorney in Houston, Texas, but also federal agents. We are well aware that one of the focuses initially, as reported in other venues, that Cardinal DiNardo was instructed himself to hold documents, to not destroy them, and to instruct his fellow bishops. That says right up front that he knows things that he's not telling us. As a victim, aside from being a former priest, aside from being a whistleblower, as a victim, it is important that these redactions be undone. The state Supreme Court did us an injustice yesterday, but that doesn't mean that victims cannot bring their material forward, that they can't investigate these redactions themselves, and in appropriate circumstances and with the assistance of legal counsel, they may be able to bring them forward. The truth is going to come out, and it would be better if Cardinal DiNardo were to reveal today what he knows, because I can assure him that we will find out what he knows. And even as it stands now, if he is guilty of any sort of cover-up, he is ill-equipped to represent the bishops of the United States. Maybe a fair choice given the tendency of all of them to cover up, but why is he in this position given the history of cover-up in this diocese, which is now well known.
And we applaud Attorney General Josh Shapiro for saying yesterday that it's time now for Bishop Zubik to release these names, to inform the parishioners of these parishes and these schools and other institutions in the diocese. They deserve to know the truth.
And one more thing, too, is if Bishop Zubik, knowing now the history of the cover-up that he was involved in and what we do know about Cardinal DiNardo and the cover-up that he is engaged in, if these were laymen today presenting themselves to the seminary for entrance, they would be denied. With their record of child protection, they would not be admitted to the seminary. And here they are leading dioceses and leading their fellow bishops.
Let's go back to where you talked about the possibility that Cardinal DiNardo's name could be one of those redacted.
Yes.
Do you have any reason, anything firm, any concrete that says that that is a fact, or is that just speculation?
He had to know, just being in diocesan offices. I'm saying that from my experience as a rank and file priest, knowing all of the priests that are named in the Erie section of the grand jury, and knowing many of them to have been offenders before this grand jury was ever convened, that a man of Cardinal DiNardo's stature would undoubtedly know. If you want to call that speculation, that might be a fair thing to call it. But given the systematic nature of the cover-up in the church and the playbook that bishops tend to use, the playbook referred to by Josh Shapiro, by Daniel Dye on page 3 of the grand jury report, how could he not know? How could he not know about priests that were removed from high schools while he was Assistant Secretary of Education? He must have known.
But knowing that information and being one of the redacted names, the jump, the leap is you're suggesting that Cardinal DiNardo in some way was an abuser himself.
Oh, I'm not suggesting by any stretch that he was an abuser. I'm simply saying we don't know the extent to which he was involved in the cover-up, and we need him to come clean. The burden is not on us to speculate. The burden is on him to relieve us of that uncertainty.
How can he come clean without getting at least a nod from the Vatican saying, yes, tell everything you know?
Well, he has a conscience, number one, like we did, and became whistleblowers. I lost 2 careers because I whistleblew allegations of clergy sexual abuse. I was an Irish Christian brother for 23 years and was abused in that religious order. I became a priest. I testified before a state legislature in New York and called for the resignation of any bishop who has covered up sex abuse. And 3 days later, I was called into the bishop's office and fired. I've lost 2 careers because I have decided to side with the victims and to also help to protect children. And that's not what these people are doing. Cardinal DiNardo has a conscience, and he should use the conscience. That's way beyond the obedience to the Pope, the conscience.
What was your situation? Why did you leave the priesthood?
It was 2 things, really. First of all, struggling with my trauma. And honestly, drinking and using substances as a form of triage to cope with that trauma. I had been in treatment for alcoholism while I was a priest, and when I came back from that experience and was sober, I found it nearly impossible to function with all these constant reminders of that type of behavior, having to go to priest convocations, priest in services, etc. And not only just the constant reminder of my own trauma, but then taking allegations of abuse of other children who were in my care, taking those to the bishops and having nothing done about it. I felt that in conscience I couldn't stay, and just even to, I think, secure my own health, I could not stay.
How long ago was that?
I left in August of 2014. I was a priest in active ministry, public ministry, for 18 years.
And what about you?
I was fired in 2003. I then turned around and sued my bishop and other entities, including those who abused me, in 2005. As a result of that, I was suspended completely from the priesthood for suing my bishop. And then, because of a series of retaliations and harassments, I petitioned Pope Benedict to let me out in 2011, and I was out in record time.
Why is it important, or what is the importance of knowing the 11 names if, in fact, there has the grand jury, etc., didn't get to the point where they could charge these people, could do anything legally against them? What is the point of revealing those names?
The names are important because their victims are out there suffering. And right now, there are people living in silence, and they now know that a Supreme Court justice has allowed those names to remain secret. The worst thing about child sexual abuse is secrecy. And any kind of secrecy, especially the secret of being sexually abused, is only added to when courts or diocese or anyone else allows those secrets to remain secret. So what we want that information out is because we want that information to come out because those victims can never heal or recover if they can't talk about it, or they really are not able to say, oh, gee, my abuser's name is out there now. Maybe I can do something about it.
Even though no action may ever come against those 11.
Even though there's no action, right.
It's absolutely an opportunity for healing for the victims to have that material come forward. That's my number one reason for asking Bishop Zubik and the other named parties to reveal themselves and to reveal what they know. But beyond that, the notion that within Pennsylvania state law that the statute of limitations has passed may be true in terms of the state of Pennsylvania, but it's a bit of a fallacy to leave the discussion there, because many of these victims were brought across state lines, and these bishops brought themselves across state lines as they brought their playbook from one state to another. And so when you look today at the kinds of things that the U.S. attorneys are talking about investigating, it's things like trafficking, it's the organized nature of these crimes that actually it raises the individual experience, the individual trauma to, a much more organized, systematic level that the federal government is interested. And so we don't want to focus simply on state statutes when there may be federal laws that have been broken. And these 11 people, these 11 men who are redacted in Pittsburgh, maybe they can't be charged in Pennsylvania, but perhaps they could be charged another way.
Do you know that all 11 are in Pittsburgh? Is that
we're referring to the 11 named parties redacted in the Pittsburgh portion of the grand jury report.
You said 2 names you know.
Yes.
And they are where? Geographically?
I'm not going to say. Within
are they in Erie or are they in
they're
Pittsburgh?
within the state of Pennsylvania, and they are active.
All right. Do you have any reason to believe that you know that any of the other names are active priests? You know 2. And
Well,
you know they are, but
Bishop Zubik has publicly stated that even before the grand jury report came out, that he has priests that would be named in the report who are in active ministry in the Diocese of Pittsburgh. He was quoted himself saying that.
fair enough.
Anything else?
We're good. Thanks, gentlemen.
By the way, my 2005 lawsuit was a RICO claim,
Yeah.
an organized crime
First one,
claim.
probably.
Wow.
Maybe that was the first one filed. And now the U.S. attorneys are looking at RICO charges, possibly. When I appealed in the Second Circuit in the Southern District of New York, the judge threw it out and fined my attorney $8,000 for filing a frivolous lawsuit. When I appealed it, the judge who led the appeal was Sonia Sotomayor, who now sits on the United States Supreme Court, who said to us, how come you didn't bring back the RICO claim? Which we didn't, because my attorney had already been fined, and we felt they could find more. They could, put more penalties on us, on him. So, and now everyone's looking at RICO charges.
What was the resolution of your case?
My case was thrown out basically for statute of limitations. After the federal charge was thrown out of RICO, we then went to New York State Supreme Court, and it was thrown out basically for statute of limitations.
Okay.
One thing worth keeping in mind too is there were approximately 1,000 victims affected by the 301 priests identified in the grand jury report. 1,000 victims. Shapiro's office has received over 1,300 phone calls since August 14th, since the release of the report. And so the addition of these 1,000 tips that have come forward helps advance the investigation. We may find out more about these redacted parties. We may find out more. I knew of one other victim of my perpetrator once the report came out. Now I know of a total of 6. And so the material coming forward is a benefit, I think, in itself. But you also need to look into, and you can Google this, I don't think, this will be speculation, so maybe off the record would be best, but there is a 41st, 42nd, and 40